I found them.
You found what?
The keys. The keys to happiness.
Oh no!
Oh crap. Here, I gotta take you.
Mended light.
Folks, how can you find happiness in life? Here's the thing, you don't.
Oh, wow.
Well, we're not looking for happiness. That's the curveball we're throwing at you. Happiness is not what we're seeking. What are we seeking and why?
Well, here's the conversation that I want to have before we have that conversation.
Okay.
Happiness is a great emotion. It's a fleeting emotion. It doesn't stay with us, just like sadness or grief or loneliness or, anything else.
And happiness tends to be circumstantial.
Yeah, it comes and it goes and we feel it and it's wonderful. And then it doesn't stay with us. And quite often happiness is associated with pleasure, right? And once again, there's nothing wrong with pleasure. But if we orient our life to pleasure and we orient our life to happiness, it's fleeting, it's circumstantial, it leaves. It's not long lasting. It's a fair weather friend.
I get it.
And so what can we create in our life that has more depth and more staying power? And I would say that is joy.
Yeah. And the thing about joy is we can experience it simultaneously with sadness or stress. And oftentimes it's hard to feel. Or grief. And it's hard to feel happy when those things are happening. Yeah. Dumbledore said it best. We're going to watch a little clip.
Ooh. What did Dumbledore say?
But happiness can be found even in the darkest of times. If one only remembers to turn on the light.
Now, he says happiness can be found even in the darkest of times if we just remember to turn on the light. But I think what he's really talking about is joy.
Yeah.
So what are the things that bring us joy? What are the things that bring us meaning and purpose, even in our hardship? It's different for every person. How you turn on the light is different for every person. But we want to share with you what's worked for us individually.
So how do you plant seeds of joy in your life? And as Jono said, we each have to answer that question for ourselves. And a big realization that I had sometime in the last year to year and a half is I was planting all sorts of seeds, so to speak, in my own life. And I was hoping to get joy, and I never got joy. And I was really confused by that. And we're often not very conscious of what we're orienting our lives to. For me, I had always oriented my life to accomplishment, which isn't a bad thing, right? Because there's so many judgments we make about ourselves and the outcome to the choices that we make. And I'm not sitting here being like, oh, I always oriented myself to accomplishment and achievement, and therefore that was bad. Right? And that is where the question comes, is this serving me? Is this supporting me? I would say with a little bit of awareness on my part, it wasn't serving me. It wasn't supporting me. I was always accomplishment driven. I was tying my worth to that accomplishment. And then I was like, why am I not experiencing joy? I would compare it to being like, I'm planting apple seeds and I really want to harvest peaches. Why am I not getting peaches? And then being angry about it.
No! No! No!
Right? I don't know if you can relate to this. And so as I became aware of this, I, being the analytical person that I am, I would start asking myself every single morning, like, what can I do today to create joy? What can I do today to plant seeds of joy in my life? And I seriously had to ask myself questions like, what brings me joy?
Yeah.
Like I don't know, right? I'm like, I feel little moments of joy when I eat dark chocolate. I'm like, that goes on the list. I used to love to play the piano and guitar. Maybe consider that. I love paddleboarding, right? So those are all things that I can do or things I can consume, like dark chocolate. And those are all helpful. But even just being in a mindful state of being like, hey, today's not going the way I wanted it to. I don't feel a lot of joy or gratitude. I am going to choose to focus on the things that are going right? Yeah. Because we all have things in our life that go wrong and unexpected things that pop up. That doesn't mean everything is going wrong, even though sometimes it can feel like it, right? And so I got to the point where I would start taking a few mindful, slow, deep breaths, the box breathing that we talk about all the time, if you've seen any of our other videos, or different types of breathing. And I would do that. And then I would think about 3 things in my life that do bring me joy, that I am grateful for. And even in that moment, I would just change the way I felt about my life.
Yeah.
And I would say after about a year and a half of doing that, I genuinely feel more joy in my day-to-day life, because we don't realize how much of our state of being is really the neural pathways in our brain. And if something about your life isn't working for you, it's like, well, how do I go about changing those neural pathways? I wasn't oriented towards joy. And I went back and looked in my journal, and probably like 8-9 months ago, beginning of the year, I had like all sorts of lists of joy of things I could do, things I could eat, things I could feel. And I literally had to write myself a list, because that's where I was at. And I don't do that anymore, because I can access joy so much more quickly in my life.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that and for being so vulnerable. For me, I definitely have pursued pleasure, right? And that fleeting dopamine rush of the things that I enjoy. And sometimes
You weren't oriented to purely goal accomplishment. That's shocking.
No, but
I'm shocked.
To be fair, like I don't want to paint this picture of like this grand metamorphosis. I've always been oriented to joy when it comes to service of others. I've always been oriented to joy when it comes to connection with others.
Yeah.
But the things that were getting in the way of really feeling it were self-loathing and fear.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was all about kind of unclogging the pipes, as it were, so that joy could flow. Because I was doing the things to feel joy, but then because of self-loathing, I was engaged in habits that were harmful to me and that were against my values. Because of self-loathing, I would overcommit myself, and I would promise things that I couldn't deliver on, and then I would lie about whether or not I'd actually done them. And then I had to live with walking around knowing that I had lied to people that I cared about. Because of self-loathing, when people tried to show me love, I couldn't really let it in. Or I would let it in and it would just, I used the bucket with a hole in it analogy, right? Because I didn't love myself, people could fill me up with affection, and I'd feel it for, a couple hours, and I'd be like, this is great. And then it would just leak out of the bottom. Because at my core, I didn't really believe that I was lovable. And the fears kept me from growing, kept me from facing my weaknesses and really working on them. I wanted to stay where I was comfortable. I wanted to stay where I felt I was playing to my strengths. And don't get me wrong, I got a lot of mileage out of that, socially, in relationships, professionally, doing the things I was good at. But because I was afraid to really look underneath the rock and take a look at my weaknesses and work on them, I gave them power. Actually, I didn't even give my weaknesses power. I gave the fear power, and everything was magnified and bigger than it really needed to be. I don't want to say brought me joy. I want to say opened me up to joy, because again, I was doing things to feel joy, the connection and the service. But what really opened me up to let it in was having compassion on myself, was seeing that I was worthy of love just by existing. That my weaknesses didn't make me any less worthy of love than any other human being who also has weaknesses. And that it was time for me to be honest with myself about who I was and to be honest with others. And the more I lived in honesty, the less I carried guilt and the self-loathing started to melt away. The more I gave myself grace, the easier it was to extend it to others. And because I didn't let my self-worth be reliant on what others thought of me, I was also able to live in truth and not be so afraid. And doing that really freed me up to just live as me and say, yep, this is what I'm working on. This is what I'm struggling with. Thank you for your patience with me. Thank you for your grace with me. Instead of lying or hiding or minimizing or justifying or any of these immature behaviors that I was demonstrating before. That's what's freed me up.
Well, and so we've shared like some of our own personal obstacles to joy, and we each have those personal obstacles, right? And that's why we love our personalities course we talk about so much, is those are pretty common obstacles for dreamers and healers.
Yeah.
And for me, those are pretty common obstacles for thinkers and closers. And those obstacles are absolutely there, and ignoring them doesn't serve or help you. They just grow bigger. And you get to choose, hey, am I going to work through this? Is it going to be my opportunity? Or am I going to just let the obstacle grow and say, hey, I'm stuck and this is all I can do? So often we have an unconscious compass guiding and directing us, right?
Yeah.
And my unconscious compass looked drastically different than yours, right? But what are we choosing with our thought processes? What are we creating with them? And if we're unconscious about those thought processes, what can help us become more conscious? And what happens when we get to this state of awareness of what's like really going on for us? We're often hit with pretty hard self-judgment.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why we talk about self-compassion so much, is because we have to have something that we can meet that self-judgment with.
Yeah.
We have to have that compassion, that empathy, that understanding, because we all have those challenges. It's part of the human condition, the human experience.
You know, Alicia, there's something you said to me the other day that I thought was so powerful. If we're not consciously choosing, then we're not consciously creating. And if we're not consciously creating, then we're getting tossed around by life. We need to choose and create who we're going to be and whether or not we're going to choose joy. Or if joy isn't your goal, it could be peace, right? It could be contentment, it can be connection. But the fact is, joy...
Love or self-compassion, whatever you're orienting yourself to.
The good news is that joy, peace, love, self-compassion, they're all interconnected. And if you're focusing on one, the others kind of emerge as byproducts.
Yeah.
That said, I think we experience cognitive dissonance when we're not aligned with our values. And so we need to ask ourselves, are my values the issue? Are they unrealistic, or do I not really believe in them anymore? Or do I need to make changes so that I can live in alignment with them? And I do believe that is how we experience joy. We clear away the clutter and we set that intention.
Yeah. We get more happiness from planting seeds of joy, planting seeds of love, planting seeds of self-compassion than we get from just seeking happiness.
Yeah. That's where it's at, folks. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, we invite you to check out See Yourself to See Others, where I wax all philosophical about how to actually live a fulfilled life. Until next time, folks, keep shining.
We need your light.
Yeah, we do.